Got it.
Awesome. So welcome to the CHAOSS OSPO Metrics Working Group meeting for Thursday, March 7th. As always, we are under the CHAOSS Code of Conduct, so please be kind to each other. The question for the day was, what is your favorite smell and why? And so we've got some interesting ones. I do like fresh winter green leaves. I think that's a good one. Rain/thunderstorm, Matt, also good. Coffee smells delicious. Nutmeg, that's also a good one. Old books, they make me sneeze, but they do smell nice. Cool. All right. So if you haven't already put your name and your favorite smell, go for it. And then with that, I think we will go ahead. I'm going to move. Anna said she can't make it to this meeting, so I'm going to move her to next agenda item or next meeting's agenda. Okay, so a bunch of stuff on the insight guides. So we have determined that the name insight guides is confusing. So I've had so many confusing conversations with so many people because there's a lot of confusion. Like metrics models are designed with a group of metrics to help you generate insights about your project. So I feel like maybe insight guides is not a great name for these guides because in reality the focus, so we have metrics models which are designed to let you use metrics to get insights kind of less specifically. These guides are really designed to help you understand how to use the metrics to actually make some tangible improvements. So if you look at the responsiveness guide, which is the one that is a little further along than some of the others. I don't know if anybody has the link and wants to drop it in the chat or something. It's really the meat of the proposed, or the meat of the guide is things that you should think about to actually make the improvements to improve responsiveness. So then the same thing on the contributor side will do. It will eventually have that section, and that's the real, I think, value of these guides is making suggestions for how to think about your context and the things that you might want to actually do to improve, and then how you use the metrics around that. So I'm kind of thinking maybe how to guides, how to improve contributor sustainability. And then maybe we could have other how-to guides that aren't necessarily how to improve a thing, but maybe how to do something else. And maybe we could expand this concept beyond sort of the implementation guides. That seems to me like a software implementation, which I think is part of I've been thinking about metrics models as the implementation, how you implement the metrics, and then these are like how you interpret the stuff. So I'm just sorry, I just rambled for a couple of minutes, and now I'm gonna let people tell me maybe interpretation guides, Elizabeth. What do people think? Is insight guides confusing to people? Because I've had a lot of confusing conversations with a lot of different people. So I think possibly yes. But I'm curious what people think might be a better name, because these don't have anything to do with the metrics models. So they're completely separate from the metrics models. And I think we need to be careful to come up with a name that makes it clear that these are about improving things, and these aren't necessarily, they don't map to models. They're not about the models. It's a how-to. It's a how do you use this stuff, and how do you do something with it? Now we'll really be quiet and just let people talk.
I feel like it. Oh, sorry, Ed, you had your hand up and I just started talking.
Oh, that's all right. Go ahead, and then I'll follow up.
I feel like the term I keep coming back to is a practice. but I don't like the term best practice because I feel like it's like a suggestion, but practice tends to like be more about like how to do something or like how to approach something. So I feel like best practice is generally like, I've seen that term used for things like this, but I don't really necessarily think that these are best practice. I think they're practice guides because they're like, it's a suggestion for how to do something. So I don't mind the implementation guide, but I also could see how that could be confusing. Like I don't know if there's a great word anywhere, but I guess if I had to pick one, it would be practice.
It was just echoing on the practice word. I've heard the word practitioner, which seems like not a word that software people use, so that might be kind of off-putting. But I guess I would agree with the thought that we want to be looking at something that gives people ideas and suggestions and ways of working that will improve the quality of their project, much more so than a set of metrics to evaluate their project. And it should happen to be the case that if you follow these guides or listen to them or think about them, that the metrics will change in a better way, but it's not necessarily, tightly coupled one-to-one, model to model, data point to data point. Thanks.
Yep, before Sophia said the practice guide, I was going to bring up that the inner source folks use something called patterns. So I don't know if that's something worth talking about, but actually, I think I like practice guide better. +1 for practice guide, but also throw in patterns or yeah, I think they call them pattern guides or something like that. I can look it up if there's interest in that.
It does look like it's
Yeah,
patterns.
pattern.
Is this it? Josh, that link I just put there, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the Git book that they published. So I
Okay.
guess they've got it kind of in chapter format. So maybe that doesn't really apply since we've broken it out into separate guides. But yeah, pattern implementation guide, practice. Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting all tongue-tied. Yeah, I like practice guide best now though.
Practice guide. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, we're not married to the fact that they have to be separate guides. They're going to be easier to write that way. They could be chapters in a thing. We haven't quite decided how we're going to display those. The plan is to write a few of these and then figure out the best way to display them, because they are kind of the way that we're doing this has evolved a little bit since it started. So we're not entirely sure what these are going to look like until we get a little bit farther. And yeah, Matt, I agree. I like the book idea. I think my initial thought was always that we could kind of collect all of these together and you could just like read the whole thing. Or if you're just interested in a topic, you should be able to quickly get to that topic. So I think it's the beauty of the web, right? We can do it in multiple ways and pull the same data into multiple formats. Okay. Does anybody not like practice guide? Is there anybody who thinks that's problematic in some way?
I know what that means, but I knew what insight guide meant, so may not be a good judge.
I like it.
Okay. So we'll
Alice had a comment.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Um,
Oh, yeah, Alice.
Yeah, no worries. I slightly prefer practitioner guide because I think it's a little bit easier to parse than practice guide, because practice can be a noun or a verb. It's not entirely clear in which sense it's meant, but that's kind of nitpicky. It's just a small improvement. And it does have a slightly different meaning as well, so it may not be appropriate. Yeah, Georg's got a good point there. We are talking more about the verb rather than the noun, so going towards the noun doesn't help necessarily. Just a thought.
Okay, well, we'll keep thinking about this. I think maybe we'll start with practice guide, and see where let's see where this gets us. We'll see what happens. Or yeah, good practice guide. Okay, we're gonna practice guide, practitioner guide. We've got kind of sounds like we've got two camps looking at the chat. So we'll probably just pick one, and we can continue to rename these. So we'll see how that goes. Now in the last meeting, we talked about the contributor risk guide. And the word risk seemed to generate also some confusion. And as I was writing the contributor risk guide, I realized that what I was talking about wasn't really risk, it was really sustainability. So I have renamed this to contributor sustainability, which I think better articulates the metrics that we were talking about and why you look at contributor risk, because you want to look at it because you want your projects to be sustainable over time and your contributors sustainable. So it's not written yet, but I did take a bunch of the feedback that we got in the last meeting, and I wrote kind of the first section or two. So feel free to have a look at that and provide some feedback on what I've written so far. Oh, thank you, Sean. I forgot that I wasn't actually sharing. So yeah, so I got through the introduction section and the identify trends section. So I would encourage you, if you've got some time and want to have a look at it, feel free to have a look. Feel free to make suggestions in the sections that I haven't written yet, because these guides are better if we all help each other. So I would encourage you to to have a look. And I'll continue to do some more work on it, and then I'll bring it back into the meeting. I mostly wanted to say that I kind of renamed it to contributor sustainability and make sure that that did resonate with people, and that you didn't all think that that was a bad idea before I did it. But yeah, I'll bring it back in when we're a little bit further along and we can get a little more feedback. Okay, I got some +1s for the name change. So good. Okay. Next thing on the agenda, how does your organization think about visualize open source supply chains?
That was me. So
Okay.
I just figured there are a lot of people who've maybe thought about this. So I hear this term open source supply chains or open source ecosystems pretty regularly, but I think they're pretty vague concepts. But I think they're kind of important to understand, because you don't just look at projects in isolation. So I'm curious just how within your organizations you define supply chains, how you go about seeing supply chains, like connections of projects that are important to you. I'm just open for thoughts here. Or if you don't think about it at all, and you're like, I just don't want to, I don't want to go there. too complex. Yeah, Ed.
Yeah, so when I talk to people about supply chains, it's often a matter of pattern recognition on the other person's part to see if I can tell a story that would convince someone that something that they've never heard of actually matters to them. So it's very easy to say, oh, such and such open source program is running in production. We need to worry about it. Okay, that's easy. not as easy but describable is such and such is running a production and it depends on this thing, and this thing has a known identified problem. We need to like chase down the known identified problem in a dependency of something that's in production. And that's pretty easy. But if you go down 2 steps down the rabbit hole, you say, well, we care about this in the abstract, and then this depends on that, and this depends on that, and there's a build system called Bazel, and if Bazel doesn't work, the whole thing doesn't work. Like, that's a really, really tough story. And so from a supply chain perspective, I think of it as either sort of concentric rings or a network where you have poorer visibility the more hops you go out. But it's very much a network problem rather than a spreadsheet problem. And just because you haven't heard of something doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to come and bite you.
Ed, is it mostly just through dependencies?
It's mostly through dependencies and the identifiable risks from the dependencies. So the risks might be bugs, CVEs, right, that sort of thing. They might be organizational dependencies. A certain vendor has purchased another certain vendor and suddenly all the contracts are up for grabs. There's a lot of things that might disrupt something. Occasionally you have a hard time assessing at the beginning of the question, like there's some problem and some bias somewhere. We run hardware. Like, does it affect us? Do our vendors know if it affects them? So there's often an uncertainty gap at the beginning of an assessment where you're not really sure whether you depend on it or not because it's novel to you and you need to find out fairly quickly.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Yeah, Sean.
I think what Ed shared was very helpful. You and I have had this conversation, but I thought I'd mention it here. I think one of the things that's tricky about using supply chains to describe software is that there are some fundamental differences between a software supply chain and what most people traditionally consider as a supply chain. And I think that maybe the conceptual biggest difference is that there's virtually nothing that I would characterize as a commodity that's in the supply chain, or the software that you might consider to be commodity software is not the stuff we're worried about. It's all of the little niche pieces that we import from all over the place. And that's different than other supply chains.
Thanks. Yeah, Remy.
This is putting on a hat from long ago, but back in the old days when I was the Fedora lead for a community, we talked about rings as well, where packages were sort of thought of as there's core. So core is like the base system, operating system level packages that you need to install the other packages on top of them. And then packages that were in a similar family or in a similar programming language would be put into like a ring or a group. So, you had core, which I just linked to, and then there was like Python, and then the Python ring and the Ruby ring and the, whatever ring. And like distros are a very specific kind of software ecosystem, so that may not translate as well. They're more of a, doesn't map easily to OSPOs or places with lots of products, but the idea, that's one way that we did it in Linux land. I thought I'd throw it out there.
Thank you.
This is Jeff here. I have a comment on this, if I could. First off, today's my second day working at GitHub, so I'm part of the OSPO there. So I've changed hats, and so I'm not speaking for GitHub today. I'm just announcing my who I'm with. But in terms of kind of this question here, I've seen kind of 2 places in my previous roles where this has come up. One is around the selection side, and one is around the response side. And I'll have a different kind of way of visualizing the supply chain when I'm on the selection side and versus the response side, primarily, security and compliance response. So on the selection side, it's very much around, is it the right thing? All the classic, good license. Is it have all the right sustainability things that we want to see in terms of number of contributors, last release, et cetera. Obviously license and kind of a history of vulnerabilities and repair of those vulnerabilities. That's kind of like the core, the classic core. Hey, does this thing look good? Are all the street lights green for classic selection choices? Then on the response side is really where that supply chain comes into play, because a lot, you're running SCA tools. There's the vulnerability of the day that's popped up, whether it's Log4j or something else. And that's where, traditionally the SCA tool pops off and says, you have a bad vulnerability here. And it's, it's OpenSSL. And everybody says, oh, just upgrade it. Well, we can't, because it's part of the chain. We got it from this bundle, which got it from this bundle. And that's very often where it has to then go to like the OSPO or the kind of the people acting like the OSPO to unwrap that onion, because, we know it's a bad version of it's Heartbleed, it's OpenSSL, et cetera. But we then have to go to our commercial contracts, or we have to go to the, how did this get onto our disk? And that's really where I think the tools are not quite good enough there to kind of unwrap that. Why is zlib sitting here? Why is OpenSSL sitting here? We just found it for the first time because we ran an SCA tool, but we need to then persist how that got to us, and who's in charge of fixing the vulnerability. Who do we have to call? Who's responsible for like a GPL violation or a commercial violation, et cetera. So those are kind of the two views, selection and response, that I've seen the supply chain really kind of take two different sides of the coin.
Thank you. That's great.
See Gary's hand up.
Oh yeah, Gary.
Yeah, that comment about how there's a difficulty identifying where in the software supply chain something came from gave me an idea that's sort of, it's not something we're visualizing well right now, but it's something that we are working to do for the data we already have, where, and will eventually be visualized, where transient dependencies versus direct dependencies have vastly different levels of effort and influence that an application team could make a difference on, or that an OSPO can make a direct difference on. So even just understanding this is something that comes bundled somewhere else versus this is something that we are directly deciding to import, and then being able to relate the transient dependencies to the direct imports that we have is like, I think related to this, and that we'd want to have that visualization, but we're currently still building that association. And what you just said reminded me of that, Jeffrey.
So do people look at things like patches working, like patches as being worked through a sequence of projects, or are they looking, do you ever look at things like participants that are in one project are also participants in other projects? I'm hearing a lot about dependencies. These are just like these technical dependencies. Are you looking at other things to try to understand that supply chain as well? Yeah, Remy.
This is not my research, but once upon a time, there was a hacker in the Python community. Her name is Jackie Kazel, and she did like a contributor graph. It was an agent-based network, which is different than some of the other kinds of graphs, trying to look at the core contributors across different Python libraries. I can try and look up the name of the library. She released it. She talked about it at PyCon, but it was like admittedly somewhat ancient history now.
What was her name?
Can
you put it in the chat?
Jackie Kazel, Kazil. I'll try and Google for her work, but that was more of the human supply chain stuff that you're talking about, Matt.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Alyssa.
Sorry, in response to the question, like, are there other types of other things that we're looking at supply chain graphing? Something that I've been interested recently is this growing conversation around ML and AL like bill of materials. So looking at like what our software supply chain looks like when it comes to things like energy consumption and environmental impact in like the full supply chain of our software development. And I'll point you to there's a Cyclone GX standard specification that there's been like growing conversation about, as well as the Green Software Foundation, which is another Linux Foundation group that's been doing stuff around not necessarily supply, like it's the energy consumption of that they want to use in supply chain mapping.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, I won't take up any more time. That was really helpful. So thank you, everybody. Well, thanks, Alyssa. Got it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. That was really interesting. That was a good agenda topic, Matt. We kind of talked about daylight savings time this weekend. I don't know, Elizabeth, if you want to add anything. I think that for those of us in Europe, it means our meetings are going to be an hour earlier for CHAOSS for the next 3 weeks. So 3 weeks of time zone confusion. Oh, there are some exceptions to that though, Elizabeth, right? Some of the meetings don't move.
Correct. So like the CHAOSS Africa meetings are on West Africa time and CHAOSS Asia is on India Standard Time. But this meeting in particular is tied to US Central, like most of our kind of just general working meetings. So it will change. So sorry.
And this direction's easier for me because it means my meetings are an hour earlier, which is great. Okay, anything else on anything else on daylight savings? Okay, Remy, LF, OSSNA / OSPOCon / CHAOSScon.
Yeah, I figured I'd just add an agenda item. I know it's still a little ways out, but we're getting close, and I wanted to see if there were any official resources or threads where people were talking about CHAOSS activities happening at Open Source Summit. And since then, a bunch of people added a bunch of stuff to the agenda. So I think the question has been answered, but if everyone who's not reading the agenda, well, you are reading it, you're looking at it on the screen. So thank you everyone who added stuff for that.
Cool. And we do, Elizabeth, do we have a booth there too?
Yes, we will have a booth at OSSNA as well. So come get stickers if you haven't gotten your chaotic and CHAOSS stickers. We may even have some of these sparkly ones. I don't know. We got to figure out who gets these. Gonna have to jump through some hoops.
I'm bringing chaotic t-shirts too.
And you can also
I will just also mention that we can also always use help with the booth. If you've got an hour or two, it's nice if Elizabeth can actually go to some sessions and isn't stuck in the booth the whole time. So those of us that can spare a bit of time at OSSNA to help out in the booth would be appreciated.
Big heart, yes.
You get a
and we're
free
also giving away
sparkly sticker.
What's that?
You get a free sparkly sticker.
There you go. That's the bar. We're also giving away a Pac-Man Lego, so you can put your name in for that as well.
And we are hoping to have I'm trying to finalize the venue for the CHAOSScon social. So we should hopefully be able to have a social event after CHAOSScon. So I'm looking at a local pub basically to give us a room. I need to confirm it. So that'd be fun. Anything else on CHAOSScon? OSSNA related to that?
I have a question. Can you make sure there's a link dropped somewhere about CHAOSScon? I'm still working on approval for OSSNA, and any piles of like, I should really go because all these cool people will be there would be a big thing.
Yes, absolutely. So we have the agenda for CHAOSScon is on the website. I think I think maybe somebody just added, no, that's not the actual.
I just put it in the chat at least to start.
Okay. We'll
Thank
just
you, that's-
copy that into the.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the agenda is there. We're gonna work on developing some metrics. We're gonna have updates. We're gonna have lightning talks. So if there's something you want to talk about, Ed, maybe you could feel free to propose a lightning talk. Yeah, Georg mentioned in the chat, there's also a morning event before CHAOSScon. Sean, we really need to get this promoted out there so people know, so that they can make travel arrangements.
Yeah, it's promoted on the, we need to put it maybe on the CHAOSS website. We have an agenda to review now. And Georg and Callie and James and I are meeting tomorrow morning. So we can, do you want me to just work with Elizabeth to get it on the website?
That would be
Or
super
what were you
helpful.
What were you thinking? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I'll send you,
Maybe,
I'll send you the
maybe
info.
get it on the CHAOSScon page so that people go to the CHAOSScon page. I know it's technically a separate event, but maybe we can.
No, it's a CHAOSS event, and as background, we've always been told we couldn't do a full day, so we proposed this other event to see what would happen, and we got accepted to do it. So it sort of emerged that way. But yeah, I'll make sure it gets on the website. I'll work with Elizabeth to do that before next week or by Monday.
Okay. Sean, can you scroll down on the website?
Sure.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it's on the screen, so we
No,
can
it's
see the-
okay. Yeah, I obviously wasn't following along on the agenda. I was just listening. So there we go. Busted.
Thank you for sharing your screen, by the way, since I
Yep.
failed to do that.
problem.
Okay, awesome. Couple of other reminders, all things open in October. The CFP is open until March 22nd. So if you have ideas for that, it is a absolutely lovely conference. It's lots of fun, lots of OSPO folks. So hopefully we'll see some of you there. CHAOSScon NA, again, registration's open. It's co-located for CHAOSScon is co-located with OSSNA. So you sign up for OSSNA and get signed up for CHAOSScon. So we encourage you to do that. And OSSEU, the CFP is also open. So you've got a little bit more time on that. I was just looking at the deadline earlier and I've forgotten it, but it's the CFP closes April 30th. So you've got almost a month, about a month and a half to work on your proposals for OSSEU. Any other reminders people want to add? Okay. So next meeting, will people be at KubeCon? I'll be at KubeCon Paris, so I will not be at the next meeting. Is that just a impacting a couple of us? And should we keep the meeting because most people aren't going to KubeCon? Or if it seems like most of the group is going to KubeCon, then maybe we should cancel it. Quick poll, who's going to KubeCon? Ed, Dawn. Okay, so this just sounds like an Ed and Dawn problem. So I think we keep the meeting.
We can make sure we see each other in Paris.
Yes, that would be lovely. I would love to get together with you for sure. So Gary, will you?
I'm here.
All right,
Will
awesome.
do.
You're in charge.
Yep.
And then Anna, sadly, again this week could not make it for the OSPO book conversation. She really does want to have this conversation with us. We talked about it in Appledorn last week, actually. She's just unfortunately has some scheduling conflicts. So hopefully, no, she'll be at KubeCon too. So maybe not in the next meeting. Eventually, we will get Anna in again and we'll talk about the book.
That's fine. I was ready, just so you know.
That's awesome.
But has there been any update of what's been drafted on our side or?
Yeah. I can just put it in the chat here. Hold on a second. Well. So here is the current, I'll just put it in the chat. That's the current form right now. Sean, if you click on that link.
Yep. clicking. It's gotta
In the
come over
chat.
here. Yeah, I know. I clicked on it, but then it didn't go to the right place.
So if you just scroll down, I've just been kind of organizing this. Do you remember that? We just kind of organized this book chapter. Go back to the diagram, Sean.
Mhm.
Organized around these 4 things that we talked about a while ago.
Mhm.
And down below, if you look at like internal adoption or education, I just assigned it as every section just had challenges or how to overcome those challenges and questions and metrics to consider. With respect to
these-
education.
Is
Yep.
your expectation or hope, Matt, that some of us will come along and create narrative around these outlines
Yeah.
or?
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Yep. And so all these outlines were actually discussions we've had here. And so there's just one last discussion on strategy that we haven't had yet.
Mhm.
And we could have that perhaps next time. I kind of stopped because it was becoming unclear what the book chapter, there's stuff below, but it
Okay,
was kind of becoming unclear as to what was being asked for with respect to the book chapter. And I didn't want to just keep kind of pushing on something when I didn't know
yeah,
where it
Yeah.
was supposed to go. And so that would be
Hmm.
great to have Anna here. But yes, to your question, Alyssa, yes, we do have a structure.
Okay. Very cool. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add to the agenda for next week?
The chat has a discussion of FOSSI, which isn't open yet, but might be. So let's have a reminder for that to make sure we get that on a future reminders agenda.
Yeah. Yeah, someone I know told me, and she's usually in the know, she said that they were going to make an announcement about the dates in the CFP in a week or two. But we'll see. No, that's a good idea. Okay. Okay. Anything else in our remaining couple of minutes? Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We had some good conversations. It was good to see all of you.
Thank you,
And we'll
Don.
just-
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye,
Have
everybody.
a good time at KubeCon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. See you, Q.